Hey everyone, Creator Guy 78 here. Okay, so you want to learn how to do more damage. Just do more damage. Simple as. But this is Borderlands 3 and there's quite a bit of math going into how to do more damage. And I would like to just show you some examples for the first episode that I'm planning right now. No skill trees being factored in. Just the basics of how everything works. So Guardian rank is off. No, I'm not going to be factoring any skill trees. Maybe anoints, just to show where everything goes. But basically, we have this basic calculation. This is the kind of formula that Borderlands has been using for a long time. I want to say since Borderlands 1. I'm very familiar with it in Borderlands 2 as a modder. But Borderlands 3 introduces something new. So, first step is to forget the term additive and multiplicative, because those kind of boosts don't really tell you anything about what kind of attribute something is. So the fundamental thing that you'll see right here is base plus pre-add times 1 plus the sum of all scale divided by 1 plus the sum of all negative scale in terms of the absolute value. And then Borderlands 3 has something unique called scale simple, which just scales this final result, all of it. And every scale simple stacks exponentially. And then at the very end, you add all post adds, which, as if you play FLAC, you'll become very familiar. Aside from that, not much post add happens. You got that? So, not everything is just pre-add and scale, and not everything is just one attribute. Like gun damage, there's other attributes that apply to your damage and scale it to ridiculous amounts. And that's the importance of having different modifiers in your build. Like what? Well, you'll see some of these passives, we got grenade damage, splash, action skill, critical damage, weapon type damage is a big one. We have amp. I think some of these are amp. Bonus elements are a pseudo multiplier in a way. We got Terra, that's a V1, and all this garbage that you've probably heard of a million times and didn't know what they were. Elemental damage, your Guardian rank, and various skills. What gives? Well, that's where the basic gun formula comes in. So you have that your ultimate multiplier is your gun damage times your V1 times your V2 times your splash, times your crit, times your elemental damage, times some other miscellaneous modifiers that are a little weirder and don't fit in. So something I should note is that gun damage, I would throw amp in there because it's considered on shot, like all gun damage boosts. The other ones are calculated on hit. And what are V1 and V2? You really see these like names thrown around. V1, V2, what are they? Well, all you really need to care about at the moment is that they're just multipliers. There's more damage, number go up, number go up. We like that, number go up, simple as. And you want to mix it. But V1 is a shorthand for like global damage. People just call it applies to everything, global damage. It's called damage dealt modifier. And there isn't really that much access to it for the characters, except FLAC and Moze. But you don't really get a whole lot of access to it. So if you don't have a lot of access to it, that means if you do get some, it's a fairly large number, even if it's just 30%. That's just multiplicative to everything else. V2, they're not really related, but V2 is the conditional damage modifier, and you can think of it as applying to the enemy or having a lot more conditions. It's easier to start stacking V2 than it is V1 because there's more sources of it from skill trees and passives. And can have limitations to their damage source, which is why I guess the developers decided to call it conditional. So what are those conditions? Well, some of those conditions are, like I said, the weapon type. So here, there's splash. I have a splash boost, and I just have a Freeman. Does, with the splash boost, that much damage. And if we do the math, that's a 55% damage increase because this is 55% area damage. And you can also see right there from the Victory Rush, 18% damage. That's V1 like I was talking about, but right now let's just look at the area damage. you did see me mention Splash, and Splash is just a number in this game that goes up. And number go up good. Splash doesn't have anything to do with something being melee, a grenade, or a rocket. It's just a number that something gets. If something is splash, it gets boosted by splash damage. Simple as. But let's look at this. Let's throw in a passive for 28% heavy damage. That's V2. So if we do the math, look at that. It goes up even more. Because V2 is a separate attribute. Heavy damage is conditional damage. It's a separate attribute from Splash, which means it's another multiplier. Here's some math. No, I'm doing everything in post, so the number's not there for me right now. I don't know what they are. But here's another thing. Amp from, say, the toboggan. Amp damage, all sources of amp damage are multiplicative, so 2 million on crit, which means this does 1 million, because that number got doubled by the amp. Let's throw in another multiplier, another source of amp damage, from like an amp shield. And also you saw critting. Look at that, 4 million. Let's throw in barrier. Barrier is another multiplier for roughly 14%. So you won't even see the number go up, but it's even more damage. It's just being truncated, but 5 million. More damage. Number go up. It went up from 4 million. Look at that. Well, what if we want to do even more damage? So we have this kick charger in. Side note, everything in your Guardian rank is pretty much scale and adds all your other boosts, except gun damage. Guardian rank gun damage is scale simple, so it's a pretty decent multiplier. Look at that. But let's just leave that off for now. And we have this kick charger, 364,000 card damage, so yeah, right about that. It has 4 times damage on charge though, so that will be truncated, but you saw that. Nothing too special. What if we want to do more? Well, so I have all these boosts. We got Old God. This is elemental damage. See, cryo. Got a... I don't really care about this Hustler, although that might be factored in. So we got Splash and Heavy. We got Amp, Heavy, and Area. And then we have 35% V1 from this Anoint. So just off the gear alone, just off this gear, let's take a look. 23 million. Just like that. We did 23 times our damage just off of that gear alone, just off boosts and passives. That's a big deal. And if I turn on Guardian rank, it goes even higher. But you saw my anoints, and there's barrier. So let's do the math. I'll show you the math on screen, and I really hope we get that number, because I don't know what it is yet. So we have barrier. Barrier amp, splash, terror, 59 times our damage. It could probably go higher. No, it didn't. Look at that. Just off anoints, varied anoints, making different boosts in different things. Just like that. And I even have a class mod with Violent Momentum. Well, that's not very good. I want better skills with that. But you can see Zane has a lot of Violent Momentum. So if we look at this, even more. It's ridiculous. Because, well, don't worry about that. Even more damage. So you can see that these calculations and mixing different numbers together, even if they're small numbers, makes your damage just explode. And one last thing. Regular old gun damage, the consecutive hits, the pearl, but also some crit damage stuff. Hyperion and Jacobs have a built-in crit buff that's not shown on the card. It's independent of this. It's another probably scale simple, and it's just part of the gun. So with Jacobs, you'll notice, and really any gun, there's this, the crit modifier on the card is another multiplier that multiplies with the manufacturer bonus. On Jacobs it's 10%, Hyperion 5%. So we're gonna have to factor that in, and then I just have consecutive hits on it. So when we do the math, that base damage would be, well, I didn't do the math actually yet, so I'll just show it. And then we'll have this. The 90% from this is an additional plus 90%. This is regular scale gun damage, but each stack of 1% is scale simple. 1.01 to the 15th power is 1.16, so you're getting 1% more damage. So let's do the math. Blah blah blah, just pretend I had everything, and you'll see how this thing stacks. So you see, it suddenly kicked in, we got the 90%, and it kind of just starts capping out. That was an accident. Just gonna live that over there. So, I want to try to keep the consec hits alive. Let's take a look at this. 391,000. And let's do the math.